have now played for the Kookaburra. So being and knowing them, I become good friends with him when I was 16, and then you play against them a few more times when you're 18, under 21, stuff like that, and you end up playing with him all the time now, which is pretty cool looking back on. But yeah, selected for that, and then I think my first QAS scholarship was around then, and then which was cool. I was introduced to the gym and introduced to a nutritionist and things like that, where you don't get at club level or anything like that. You don't really think about it. You just go out and play hockey, and a few more things to think about after that selection. And then, fortunately enough, a couple of years later, I was offered an AIS one, so moved to Perth.
Yeah. That was 3 years.
Yeah.
Would have been that. That's quick.
Yeah.
That's quick for stuff. Because you generally, most people, when they get picked, they go through the feel that, I'm not sure if it was the same at the time, but it's the future squad, and it's the futures, juniors, and then the development squad, and then it goes in the national squad.
Yeah. So there's a few different, it has certainly changed now. In 2009, which was my first ever, my first AHL, I was actually selected as a shadow player as such for that tournament. For the entire time, the AHL used to go, so Queensland would come over to WA, play 2 games, go back to Queensland. Next weekend they'd play Victoria and Melbourne or something like that. And I was kind of like on the reserve list if someone got injured. And actually Queensland came and played over in WA, and one of our players broke his ankle during the games, and the following weekend was actually finals week down in Tasmania. So Greg Browning at the time, the coach, called me up and said, look, you're in. You're going to the finals week in AHL. And,
oh, goodness.
Yeah, so that I was kind of, wasn't expecting that, and I was thrown in there, and I didn't play a lot. That was still kind of the time where there wasn't really rolling subs. It was more just like best players play.
2009 was,
Yeah, best players play, and if you needed, you go on for 2 or 3 minute stints here and there.
Yeah, okay.
And, I was lucky enough to get a couple of minutes in the semi-final and scored 2 goals against, I think it was New South Wales. Something like that. And we made the final, and I started the final out of pure luck, I guess, from scoring a couple of goals, and we ended up losing the game. But after that, I was invited, or Jason Duff, who's now at the moment, he's our video technician or analyst. So it's funny how things work in circles and how small the hockey community is. But so he was at the time, 2009, the Junior World Cup was to be played in Singapore and Malaysia at the end of the year. And Jug offered me an opportunity to go to Darwin for a training camp with the team. And that was my first ever involvement in a national junior squad, like program as such. There was Youth Olympics and things like that at the time, which had never been involved in or never really knew about until this period of time, and went to Darwin, and we had maybe 3 or 4 games, again, intra-squad kind of. There would have been maybe 40 under 21 kids up there, and I think I was only 18 or even 17 at the time, and went up there and played a few games, and I thought, like, just as a number, like just to make up numbers, I'm in that kind of age bracket. And for me, I was never thinking about going to the Junior World Cup that time. And with the way it worked out, I would have missed out the next time because I would have been too old. 4 years later, I would have been 22, so I would have missed out on that next one. So I remember getting off the flight coming home, and I was in the car on the way home with Dad, and Dad asked me, how was it? And all I remember saying to him, it was so hot. Like, I was so tired. It was so hot up there. And then my phone rang, and it was Jason, and he said, you'd made the team of going to the Junior World Cup. And I was like, what? Like, what just happened? 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I wasn't playing AHL. A guy breaks his foot. I get thrown into the AHL Queensland team, go to Darwin for 2 weeks, and then I'm now going to the Junior World Cup in 2000, in 3 or 4 weeks later. So things went really, really quickly. Was just like super, super excited and over the moon that I'd been recognised for thinking at the time, and again, you do, as a kid, you put in all that hard work, all that extra stuff away from training, all that extra stuff away from maybe the group that you're involved in, and went away and played Junior World Cup in Malaysia and Singapore. We ended up coming third, and the following year I was invited on an AIS like a 2-week scholarship thing. They call them, I can't remember what they call them now, like a VAS, a visiting athlete agreement. Mm-hmm. So I was invited the next year on that, and we played. Australia was playing Argentina in a series over here at the end of 2010. So I'd spent most of the year, had a pretty good AHL in 2010. We ended up winning, more so because Rick had changed the rules for that AHL. There wasn't the penalty corner. I think he thought that World Hockey was going to take out the penalty corner at the time because of the flicking and was getting quite dangerous.
Yeah, okay.
So Rick made a rule that in 2010, a penalty corner was going to be the goalkeeper and 2 defenders.
Yep.
And then 4, so someone pushing out the ball as such, and then 3 players on the top of the 25.
Yeah.
And then it was just 4 on 2, basically, and a goalie. So 4 on 3 as such.
Yeah, okay.
And like we had Jamie Dwyer pushing the ball out, or Liam DeYoung.
Yeah.
We had Knowlesy, Rob Hammond, Jason Wilson, all these guys that had played for Australia, 4 on 2. It was like pretty much everyone else was running back to halfway because we'd scored like every time. So not saying that was the only reason, but we played some pretty good hockey. But if there was actual penalty corners, we might have struggled a little bit in that aspect. So we were really lucky in that. Sorry for going on a bit of a tangent there.
Right.
But yeah, so I was invited over to this AIS scholarship, and Australia were playing Argentina in a 3-game series or something, and Argentina ended up asking if they could play a couple of warm-up games against an Australian A team. Okay. And that's why, hence, I was invited over.
Yeah.
And we beat them both times, the Australian A team. I think we beat them 3-0 in 1-0 in the first game and 3-0 in the second game, and I scored in both games.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, well, that worked out well. And then that was in about November, and then, December, just before Christmas, Rick called me and said, like, you've been offered a scholarship, come on over. And that's how it went like really quickly. And coming back to the start of this is when I said that I probably was thrown in it, and you asked the question, I was probably thrown in it just a little bit too deep, and still learning to swim at that time. And with everything I'd performed in that aspect, but the constant getting up for training, the constant, like I said, how fast the game was, it probably was necessary that I needed to spend a little bit more time away from it rather than continuing to be battered and bruised and not, I guess, get to where I was or where I am now.
Did you feel like you came in for that game with the guy who broke his foot? Did you feel like there wasn't like a lot of pressure, and that's why
100%,
you performed
100%. Well? Even the next year as well. Like I'd gone to the Junior World Cup thing, like, and I still think that I don't know if it was the right decision from the coaching group. I guess I'll never know that. Again, I didn't feel any pressure on me to perform in that because I thought, like, I'm just going to go. I've never been involved. Like, all these guys knew each other from, like I said, Youth Olympics, and I was kind of the fresh guy to come in, and I thought I played okay and, like, did my job as a striker, scored a few goals here and there, and I think that it was one of those things that just happened so quickly that I just couldn't really get my head around as such. And the pressure, like you said, was really not there as well in 2010. Like I was just like, all right, that's done now. Like I'll go back to club hockey, and a couple of guys from the Junior World Cup team played for the Kookaburras in 2010, and like I knew that kind of time for myself had passed. Like I wasn't going to get the call and saying you're coming to Perth now. Like it's just going to be another year in Brizzy, which I was completely fine with at the time. And my goal at that point was to make the Queensland Blades team, not as a reserve, to make it as an actual like player in the 18, and did that, and scored a few goals, and that's probably where I then maybe put a little bit too much pressure on myself going in to the Kookaburras, and not maybe performing like I had done, and hence the reason that I was left out.
It's always an interesting how much pressure perceived pressure puts
for sure.
Affects your game.
For sure.
Do you look much into that sort of stuff now? Like you want to, before a game, you block things out, or you write things out? Because Tom Harvey on the podcast, he has his journal, but he blocks everything out, like in terms of whatever's happening with selection and all that sort of stuff. And then he has couple of things he focus on for the game. That's all he worries
definitely.
about.
I think we get hit with a lot of information over a tournament as such. There's different teams that you have to play and different players that you come up against. But I think for myself, and I found the best thing that works is if I write down 2 or 3 things that I'm focusing on. Most of the time for me, it's my first touch is always number one that I write down, because I know that if that's, like I said before, if that's on, then I know I can then create more for my teammates going forward. And if that's off, then it puts a lot of pressure on our defenders. Do they want to pass it in to me because I've mishandled the ball, or will guys be from the opposition pressuring me more because I've mishandled it? So little things like that. So normally, and most of the time, my first thing I ever write down in my book before a game or in the pre-game briefing is like Jake first touch is always there. And then it's the game plan, whether it's I think for me being more in that midfield is I can see what the opposition are doing as well, whether or not they're full pressing or they're zonal, or so I try to make a bit of a point to our group of seeing what they do, and then we react off that. Whether a team's full pressing, then we have to go into a different structure, or a team's zonal, then this is how we play. So I kind of write that down as well, and it's normally 1 or 2 of those things that I focus on and leave everything else out. Because if you don't look after yourself, then to start with, then there's no point being out there really.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because always that little bit of